The Castellano restaurant in Manhattan's Upper East Side was not the kind of place where ordinary people ate. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. White linen draped every table. The wine list was thicker than most people's mortgage documents. And on any given evening, the clientele included hedge fund managers, old money socialites, and occasionally, people whose wealth came from less legitimate sources. Tonight was one of those occasions. Victor Castellano Sr. sat at the best table in the house, the corner booth with sightlines to every entrance, the one the restaurant kept permanently reserved. At 73, he was still the kind of man who commanded a room simply by occupying it. Tattoos crawled up both arms and disappeared beneath the collar of his expensive black suit. A lion-headed walking cane rested against the booth beside him. His sunglasses sat on his nose despite being indoors, and a thick gold chain hung around his neck. Beside him sat his son, Victor Castellano Jr., mid-40s, sharper suit, fewer tattoos but the same dangerous energy. The younger Castellano ran the family's legitimate business empire, real estate, construction, 3 restaurants including this one. What the businesses covered for was something no one discussed openly. Tonight was special. Victor Sr. had flown in from Palermo 3 days ago for his grandson's christening, and tonight was the celebration dinner. The table was set for 12, family, close associates, people who mattered in the Castellano world. The restaurant's owner, Roberto, had personally assigned his best servers to the table, which is how 24-year-old Sophia Reyes ended up serving the most dangerous table in Manhattan on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday night. Sophia was the newest waitress at Castellano's. Small, quiet, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, and wide brown eyes that made her look younger than she was. She moved through the restaurant like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. Efficient, professional, but fundamentally shy in a way that made her nervous around loud, demanding customers. Roberto had pulled her aside before service. Table 9 tonight, the Castellanos. Senior is visiting from Sicily. Be respectful, be attentive. Do not make eye contact too long. And for the love of God, do not spill anything. Roberto, maybe someone more experienced? You're the only one fluent in Italian. Senior doesn't speak much English. I need you there. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she approached the table for the first time. The Castellanos and their guests were already seated, 12 people in expensive clothes, talking in a mix of English and rapid Italian. Bodyguards stood at discreet positions near the entrance. The energy at the table was warm among themselves but carried an undercurrent of power that made the air feel thick. Victor Sr. noticed her first. His eyes tracked her approach with the careful assessment of a man who'd spent decades reading people for threats. Sophia stopped at the table, straightened her spine, and did something that made every single person at that table go still. She bowed her head slightly and spoke in Sicilian dialect. Not standard Italian, not textbook Italian, but the regional old country, Sicilian, that only people from specific parts of the island even understood. Buonasera, signore. Benvenuto a New York. È un onore avere un ospite così illustre nella nostra casa. Sono Sophia. Sarò al vostro servizio questa sera. Good evening, sir. Welcome to New York. It is an honor to have such a distinguished guest in our home. I am Sophia. I will be at your service this evening. The table went completely silent. Victor Sr. slowly removed his sunglasses, his eyes, sharp, intelligent, assessing, fixed on Sophia with an intensity that would have made most people take a step backward. Dove hai imparato questo? He asked. Where did you learn this? Mia nonna era di Palermo, signore. Ha parlato solo in dialetto siciliano in casa nostra. My grandmother was from Palermo, sir. She spoke only in Sicilian dialect in our home. Victor Sr. studied her for a long moment. Then something remarkable happened. The hard, guarded expression that had defined his face for decades softened. Not completely. This was a man who'd spent 50 years in a world where softness got you killed. But the edges smoothed. Something like warmth entered his eyes. Quale parte di Palermo? Which part of Palermo? Il quartiere di Ballaro, signore. The Ballaro district, sir. Victor Sr. turned to his son. Ballaro, he said, and the single word carried weight that Sophia could feel but not fully understand. Victor Jr. leaned forward, his expression shifting from casual authority to genuine interest. Your grandmother was from Bolaro, the old neighborhood? Yes, sir. She left Sicily in 1962, came to New York with nothing, worked in a garment factory for 30 years. Victor Sr. spoke again in Sicilian, and this time his voice carried something that made several people at the table exchange glances. Sit down, Sophia, just for a moment. Signore, I have other tables. Roberto, Victor Sr. called, not raising his voice but projecting it with the kind of authority that expected immediate response. Roberto materialized instantly. Yes, Mr. Castellano Sr., your waitress is going to sit with us for 5 minutes. Someone else can cover her tables. Roberto looked at Sophia, then at the patriarch of the most powerful family in the room, and nodded immediately. Of course, Marco will take over. Sophia sat, perched on the edge of a chair that had been pulled up for her, her hands folded in her lap. She was terrified but trying not to show it. Every instinct screamed that this situation was unusual, potentially dangerous, and completely outside her training. But Victor Sr.'s expression wasn't threatening. It was something else entirely. My mother was from Bolaro, he said, switching to heavily accented but understandable English, perhaps for the benefit of the Americans at the table. She died in 1978. I was 28. She spoke to me in that exact dialect every day of my life until she was gone. He paused, and for just a moment, the 73-year-old patriarch of a criminal empire was simply an old man remembering his mother. No one has spoken to me in that dialect in 46 years. Not properly, not the way she did. He looked at Sophia with eyes that were impossibly slightly wet. You sound exactly like her. The table was utterly silent. 12 people, some of the most dangerous and powerful in New York, sat motionless as their patriarch processed a moment that clearly meant more than any of them fully understood. Victor Jr. reached over and put his hand on his father's arm. A gesture of support that spoke of a relationship built on years of loyalty and love. Sophia didn't know what to say, so she did what her grandmother had taught her. She spoke from the heart, in the language of home. Sua madre era una donna forte, signore. Come la mia nonna. Le madri siciliane, loro costruiscono tutto. Your mother was a strong woman, sir, like my grandmother. Sicilian mothers, they build everything. Victor Sr. laughed. A real laugh surprised out of him, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and showed teeth that had smiled at very few people in a very long time. Yes, he said. They do. He turned to his son again, speaking rapidly in Sicilian. Victor Jr. nodded, then looked at Sophia. My father wants to know about your family, your grandmother. Did she have brothers, sisters? One brother. He stayed in Sicily. My grandmother lost touch with him after she came to America. Victor Sr. and Jr. exchanged a look that Sophia couldn't interpret. Then the patriarch spoke again. What is your full name, Sophia? Sophia Maria Reyes. My grandmother's maiden name was Ferrante. Another exchange of looks. Victor Jr. pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed the screen to his father. Whatever he read made Victor Sr.'s eyebrows rise significantly. Ferrante, he repeated. From Bolaro. Yes, sir. I knew a Ferrante family in Bolaro. When I was young, they were, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Good people, honest people. They had a daughter who went to America in the early 60s. Sophia's breath caught. My grandmother's name was Lucia Ferrante. Victor Sr. closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the hardness was gone entirely. What remained was something raw and genuine. The emotion of a man who'd spent decades surrounded by people who feared him, suddenly confronted with a connection to the world before all of that. Lucia, he said softly. I remember Lucia. She used to sing in the square on Sunday evenings. Beautiful voice. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. She sang to me every night, until she died last year. The table held its collective breath as Victor Sr. reached across and took Sophia's hand in both of his. His tattooed fingers, fingers that had done things no one at this table would ever speak aloud, held hers with extraordinary gentleness. I am sorry for your loss, Sophia. Lucia Ferrante was a good woman. I remember her kindness when I was a boy, and my family had nothing. The Ferrantes shared what little they had with everyone in the neighborhood. He released her hand and sat back, his expression thoughtful. Then he turned to Victor Jr. and spoke in rapid Sicilian for nearly a minute. His son listened, nodded several times, and turned back to Sophia. My father would like to make an offer, not as a business proposition, as family honors family, even when the family connection is distant and old. Sophia shook her head immediately. I don't need anything, sir. I'm just grateful for the conversation. Your father's memories of my grandmother, that means more than you know. He anticipated you'd say that, Victor Jr. smiled. He says the offer isn't charity. It's recognition. You're studying to be a nurse, correct? Sophia blinked. How did you... Roberto mentioned it when we discussed staffing. You work here nights, study during the day, support yourself completely alone. My father wants to cover your remaining tuition, not as a gift, as payment for the greatest gift you gave him tonight, hearing his mother's language spoken with love. I can't accept that. Victor Sr. held up one finger, and Sophia fell silent instinctively, not from fear but from the quiet authority of the gesture. Sophia. My mother would want me to help a Ferrante girl become a nurse. She would never forgive me if I didn't. His accent thickened with emotion. You honor her memory by speaking our language. Let me honor your grandmother's memory by helping you finish your education. This is not negotiable. Sophia looked around the table, at the powerful, dangerous, complicated people watching this exchange with expressions, ranging from surprise to genuine emotion. At Victor Jr., who was smiling warmly. At the bodyguards, who had relaxed from their usual vigilance into something almost amused. Thank you, signore, she whispered. Grazie mille. Victor Sr. nodded once, firmly. Then he put his sunglasses back on and picked up his menu, the moment passing but clearly not forgotten. Now, he said in English, his voice back to its commanding tone, I believe we ordered appetizers 40 minutes ago. Where is my food? The table erupted in laughter, the tension dissolving into the warmth of family gathering. Sophia finished the evening in a daze. Roberto, who'd been briefed by Victor Jr. during a bathroom break, pulled her aside at the end of service. What did you do? He asked, half laughing, half incredulous. I greeted him in Sicilian. That's all. That's all. Roberto shook his head. Do you know who Victor Castellano Sr. is? I have some idea. And you just made him cry in front of his entire inner circle, by speaking like his dead mother. Roberto looked at her with new respect. Sophia, in 20 years of running this restaurant, I have never seen anyone affect that man the way you did tonight. Not his wife, not his children. You, a 24-year-old waitress, walked up to the most dangerous table in Manhattan and made the man at its center feel something human. I didn't mean to make him feel anything. I just wanted to be respectful, and that's exactly why it worked. 2 weeks later, Sophia received an envelope at the restaurant. Inside was a cashier's check covering her entire remaining nursing school tuition. No note, no signature, just the check and a single photograph. A young girl standing in a Sicilian square, singing, surrounded by neighbors. On the back, in shaky handwriting, Lucia Ferrante. Ballaro, 1960. Per Sophia. Sophia held the photograph with trembling hands and wept. Not for the money, though it would change her life, removing the crushing financial burden that had been slowly breaking her. But for the connection, for the proof that her grandmother's life in Sicily had mattered, had been seen, had been remembered by someone 60 years later. She finished nursing school 8 months later. Specialized in geriatric care, working with elderly patients, many of them immigrants, people whose families had crossed oceans and built lives from nothing. She brought her Sicilian dialect into her work, speaking to patients in their home language when she could, understanding that for people far from where they were born, hearing their mother tongue was medicine no prescription could replicate. Victor Sr. visited the restaurant one more time before returning to Sicily permanently. He asked for Sophia specifically, and she served his table with the same quiet grace she'd shown that first night. At the end of the meal, he called her over one last time. Sophia, when you finish your nursing, come to Palermo, visit Ballaro, find the square where Lucia used to sing. Stand there and sing something. Anything. It doesn't matter what. Why? Because the neighborhood remembers, the stones remember. And Lucia's spirit will hear her granddaughter's voice in the place where she first learned to sing. He smiled, a real smile, rare and precious. And then come back to New York and take care of old men like me. We need nurses who speak our language. Yes, signore, I promise. Years later, Sophia did visit Palermo. She found the square in Bolaro exactly as Victor Sr. had described. Small, worn, surrounded by ancient buildings. She stood in the center at sunset, the golden light painting everything warm. And she sang. She sang the lullaby her grandmother had sung to her every night of her childhood. The same melody Lucia Ferrante had once sung in this very square, 60 years before, in a life that felt impossibly far away, but was in truth the foundation of everything that came after. Nobody seemed to notice a young woman singing softly in a Sicilian square at sunset. But somehow, the air felt warmer. The stones felt less cold. And somewhere, in whatever place good memories live, a woman named Lucia smiled. Because sometimes the most powerful moments don't happen in boardrooms or battlefields. They happen when someone speaks your language, your real language, the one from home, the one your mother used. When someone honors where you came from by carrying it forward. When a shy waitress walks up to the most dangerous table in the room and, simply by being herself, reminds a powerful man that he was once just a boy listening to his mother sing. That's the moment that mattered. Everything else was just dinner. If this story moved you, share it with someone who carries their grandmother's language in their heart. Subscribe for stories about connection, heritage, and the moments that remind us where we truly come from. And comment about a word or phrase in your family's language that makes you feel like you're home. Those words are treasures worth protecting.